What is happening in Poland's National Tax Administration is directly hitting the state budget. That's why trade unionists have written a letter to Prime Minister Donald Tusk complaining about the head of the National Tax Administration, Marcin Łoboda. The decisions made by the head of the National Tax Administration, in our opinion, contribute to a decline in tax discipline, a significant increase in tax crime, and thus a decline in tax revenues, and a deepening budget deficit. According to the Ministry of Finance, available with the draft budget law for 2025, there will be a shortfall of about 28 billion zloty in tax revenues to meet the 2024 revenue plan. To put it bluntly, Poland's national budget already receives significantly less money from taxes than a year ago. VAT, value-added tax, will receive 17 billion zlotys less than planned. CIT, corporate income tax, will receive 9 billion less zloty, and PIT, personal income tax, will receive 3 billion zloty less. Łoboda's personal decisions are said to be behind this, which translates into increased tax delinquency, among other things. Data from the National Tax Administration, more than 140,500 fictitious invoices were detected in the first half of this year, which is more than 100% more than in the first half of 2023. These are invoices with a total value of more than 4.25 billion zloty. Thus, this is how much the state budget is losing, more than 4 billion zloty, just for the fake invoices. There are fewer tax audits, less revenue from tax audits. There is, for example, a ban on going to inspections without notice. We have to notify everyone. There are also fewer of these customs and tax inspections in these customs and tax offices. There is less emphasis on fighting tax crime in general. Trade unionists are bitter about the attitude of the head of the National Tax Administration, who took up his post in December, already during the new term of Donald Tusk's government. There is no question of any cooperation. Marcin Łoboda treats the National Tax Administration trade union as if it were the enemy. He even withheld the payment of quarterly awards to employees, which, after media hype, will eventually be handed over. Today, the Unionists are demanding the resignation of the head of the National Tax Administration, Marcin Łoboda. After what happened with these awards, after the lack of reaction, after the actions, after these effects that can now be seen, I expect the head of the National Tax Administration to be replaced. That is, for him to resign and be replaced by someone who, first of all, can talk to people, to unions, to know the problems of the organization, and who can effectively manage Poland's National Tax Administration. Because Łoboda abolished the investigation divisions in customs and tax offices, among other things. Such an action is in favor of the VAT mafia. There is a collapse in public finances, and the employees of the National Tax Administration have a huge role to play in this. They are professionals who know what they are doing. They have a lot of experience, and it is hard to ignore this appeal. The policies of the civic platform in previous governments were exactly the same. At that time, there was no money for anything. There was no effort to find it from new sources. And, unfortunately, state finances were loosened to such an extent that VAT carousels ran rampant in Poland. Today, we see that this situation is, unfortunately, beginning to reappear. According to next year's draft budget, the state budget deficit will reach a record 289 billion zloty. It is therefore imperative that the National Tax Office acts meticulously and effectively, and it is at least desirable that tax crime be combated. However, it would certainly be better if the National Tax Administration did less auditing and focused more on controlling economic turnover. Donald Tusk is getting older, and his methods of governing remain the same. Moreover, with his return to the Prime Minister's office, the golden rule seems to have returned. There simply is no money, and there will be no money. We are on the verge of a state budget collapse, and the effects of the current government will be felt in all our wallets.